There we go. Okay then, so welcome everybody to effectively communicating with your stakeholders. So really good, exciting, again, free webinar, and it'll help you understand and identify who your stakeholders are, what impact do they have. So we're looking to actually identify them internally, externally, what effect do they have on us and our organisation as well. Have you actually considered how much time and energy and effort you actually spend with these different stakeholders? Is everybody actually treated exactly the same, and you give everybody the same amount of effort and information and guidance? Or would it be actually better if we spent a bit more time organising our stakeholders and thinking, right, how much time does actually that person need me for? What type of information does that person need? How much time and energy should we be spending on each one? Should we be treating them all equally, give them all the same amount of information? And what we're looking at is something communicating them in regards to power and interest. And that's something that we'll be looking at, and how we can actually communicate effectively with them, how it will benefit you, benefit them, and the organisation as well. Okay, so we'll give you some bonus material as well, some further reading, some articles, and there's also been a podcast as well. So, and you get this recording as well. So lots of information. So, please share it, please tell people about it as well. So the more information and feedback that we can get, the more we can give you as well. Okay, so welcome, thank you for joining. You've got your chat box available as well, so if you want to get in touch with me, you can either take yourself off mute and come on to audio, or on your chat box as well. Okay, so the interactive session and how it actually works. We're on Zoom now rather than WebEx, so I hope you found it all straightforward getting on this morning. And we class us all in one classroom when we look at the interactive session. Hopefully we're getting a bit closer now to actually being in a room, but the virtual is working really well as well for us all, so at least we can all still get together and see each other. The session lasts about 45 minutes to an hour. We've got access to a whiteboard so I can write some notes. You've got your workbook, your handout there. As I said, take yourself off mute and have a chat with me, have a chat with each other. It's a really good way of networking, learning from each other. Got your chat box as well if you prefer to do that, or if you're in an office. And as I said, we'll send you some really useful articles and resources to use as well. Okay. So in the workbook then, on the link that we sent you, it will ask you a few questions. And again, we adhere to GDPR, so that information doesn't go anywhere. It just helps us design more things that we can actually deliver to you as well. Okay. So let's look at the objectives for today's session then. So consider who your stakeholders are and how much value they have. So again, looking at that power and interest. Thinking about how we prioritise, how much time, how we communicate with them and bring them on board as well. And then also understanding the benefits and challenges to stakeholder relationship and relationships and networking. Okay, so it's not all roses, is it? So it's about how we can overcome that as well and actually have a really good two-way relationship with our stakeholders. Okay. So when I talk about stakeholders, who am I talking about, do you think? What if you take yourself off mute or on chat, when I say a stakeholder, who am I talking about?
Customers, colleagues, suppliers.
Absolutely, you could go on forever, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's your managers, your frontline staff, the people who supply everything you need. It's everyone. Absolutely, Catherine. Yeah, everyone has a vested interest in your work. Could be the community. See, it's thinking about internal and external. Could be the local authority, people who regulate your organisation as well. So it's making sure we have this relationship, a beneficial two-way relationship where there's a balance of power. What value do they bring and you bring? What's this power and interest that we have. Okay, and when I talk about power and interest, it's really interesting, this stakeholder theory, where there's two names which typically they're very similar: Friedman and Freeman. So Friedman was an economist, and he thought that stakeholders, the only people you should be worried about were your shareholders, the people who own the purse strings and made the money. That's who you had to please and have influence over, and they had the power and the control. Whereas Freeman was much more holistic, looked at the bigger picture. And actually, it's everyone, like you said, it's everyone who has an interest in your organisation. That it's that power and the interest. And what's really interesting is thinking about how do we ensure that we give the right attention to the right stakeholders, that we're not giving too much information to some, and we're giving the right information to others as well. Okay. So what do you think the advantages are to having this stakeholder relationship? How has it helped you having stakeholder relationships? Who's got a good stakeholder relationship example? So I must have one. Okay, we'll start with the negative then. Who's got a bad example of a relationship that they're struggling with at the moment? No?
I'll go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we've last year, 2020 back end, our business decided to merge with a sister company.
Right.
My operation. So my levels of dialogue with senior personnel, because we've got two businesses effectively on one site, and I run a packing operation for those two businesses that are sister companies. It's just chaos. It's my knowing who wants what in what format. I mean, we are only 14 months in, but it's very, very difficult for me at the minute to manage everybody's request and not succumb to who's beating the chest loudest, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. It must be a really difficult communication situation going on there as well. Who to talk to, and
it's horrendous as well because the sister company is in Holland. It's a Dutch, so we're part of a Dutch group, and it's a Dutch company. So obviously with COVID, they couldn't travel and help us out with anything. So we never got to build the personal relationships. Everything is through Teams. So yeah, that's why I wanted to come on this one in particular, because it's a pain for me and has been for 14 months. So.
That's been a painful 14 months for you then, Vicky. Bless you. Great. Well, thank you ever so much for sharing. And you're right. I mean, you're looking at two things going on there: the communication side of it, but also I don't know if you've heard of Tuckman's model of forming, storming, norming, performing. And it sounds like you're right in the storming part of the moment of everyone's trying to jostling for position, and it's all a bit of a chaos. So it's looking at, right, how can we make sure that we're communicating with each other and understanding each other and knowing what our objectives are in order to be able to work towards them together and help and support each other. But yeah, there's lots of challenges, and communication is a huge part of that. And you mentioned rapport there as well. Building rapport with your stakeholder is really key, isn't it? Because you're wanting to understand each other and actually support each other, as opposed to being at loggerheads. Actually, what's your objectives? This is my objectives. How can we help each other get there? Otherwise, it is going to be a difficult challenge there. But yeah, it's the community. Always comes back down to communication again. Definitely. Catherine, thank you on chat. Positive stakeholder relationships with our funders. Fantastic. That's really, that's a very positive relationship. It's with a funder as well. Then that's very good, Catherine. Nice one. But it's really important, isn't it, that we have these positive relationships. And yes, we will have challenges, but it's about how we can overcome that challenge. What can we do to have a meaningful conversation to be able to overcome that? Okay, so fantastic. Thank you for sharing, guys. So when we think about these challenges then, merging companies, Vicky, is a perfect example. What other challenges when you try and communicate with your stakeholders do you come across?
Is that for me or was that?
Sorry, Vicky, you're more than welcome to answer,
no,
but for everyone, yeah.
Well, for me, in communicating, there's a language barrier for starting.
Right, yeah.
And there's a bit of an arrogance of, people proving their point, a little bit of fear, I think, for whether the UK is going to take the Dutch jobs and vice versa. So yeah, from my point of view, communication is always every man and his dog in an email, completely different on a one-to-one phone call versus a group.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, yeah, the challenge is basically a bit of fear, a bit of arrogance, and dominance, and ultimately the language barrier.
Some fantastic examples there. Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, it sounds people are kind of ruffling their feathers about looking at like making a statement and trying to make sure that they're being seen, and there's a lot of mistrust sometimes as well that can cause a bit of misunderstanding, which affects the relationship. But communication, it's you mentioned there about the different types, and that's really important as well. Like the method of communication to the audience. Is the method the right? Is sending an email the right method where you can pick up a phone and then you've actually got a better relationship with that stakeholder? Because the email could very much be misunderstood, especially if there's a language barrier. Whereas with the voice, you've got the tone, haven't you? And also you've got the feedback from the other person as well. You can actually see the impact of what you're saying on them as well. Some comments in the chat box as well. Thanks, guys. So Ros, yeah, not everyone is open to other points of view and dominant discussions. Absolutely, yeah. Some people will be very have a very narrow viewpoint, and this is right and you are wrong. So again, it's about opening those communication channels, and trust is one of those ways of doing that as well, building that trust and that rapport. Catherine, the mismatch of communication styles. Oh yeah, perfect. Just what I said, talking on a call versus email can lead to lack of understanding. Absolutely. Especially with language barriers as well, the translation might not always come across. And Julie, the volume of stakeholders for us, and the difference is how I have to communicate with different groups. So yeah, it's nice if you could just got a team of 6 or something, you could quite easily categorize, right, how much power and interest do these people have. But with a lot, yeah, it takes time, investment of time to actually build those relationships up. No worries. Thanks Vicky. So yeah, lots of challenges. There could be kind of internal politics going on in the organization as well. If it was an internal, maybe they're thinking, I don't want to share it, trying to actually get information from another department. Might be externally as well. They might be thinking, why are you trying to get this information? What are you going to do with it? There might be that lack of trust there as well. Different in culture, values, beliefs. There's lots of potential barriers there, but it all comes back down to that communication and trust, being open and honest to be able to overcome any conflict or potential conflict. There are, when you think a bit about these challenges and difficulties, these barriers, what you're going to look at is actually the end result of, by overcoming these, what it actually gives you, and we'll look at that in a moment. Okay. So lots of challenges to overcome there, and one tool that we can look at is the Eden and Ackerman power and interest model. Is anyone familiar with this? Anybody seen this before? This is really useful if you've not used it before, and I've used this as well in my experience in management and leadership. It's a really good way of actually categorizing your stakeholders and think, right, I've got so many people to talk to. How am I going to do this? How do I approach this situation, this project, for example? So Eden Ackerman looked at this power and interest grid, really, and it's called stakeholder analysis. And what you're looking at is thinking, right, okay, so this person then has got for example, high power in an organisation, but low interest. So I'm thinking of in my previous role, I've created a potential manager program, like a program to train up future managers. And before you even kind of design a new project, you're thinking, right, who do I need to speak to about this? Who do I need to gain buy-in from? Who do I need to regularly update and involve in the decision making? Who do I need to keep informed and keep on track? And who do I just need to update occasionally? And it all depends on their power and interest within that project or idea. So some people will have a really high power and they could actually veto it. Some people will have low power and it'll literally just be, oh, by the way, this is what's happening. Some people will have really high interest and are really impacted by this new idea, this change. And some people have really low interest and go, well, thanks for letting me know. Doesn't really affect me, but appreciate being involved. Okay. So thinking about this new idea, this new project I wanted to do, I thought, right, okay, so for me to create this new program, I need to make sure I get the consultant and gain the buy-in from, let me just get my little arrow here, it would be from like the HR director, the people manager, so showing them that there is a need for it. So that they wouldn't necessarily be particularly highly kind of interested all the time. The interest would be right at the start, but it's actually selling it to them because they could say, no, there's not a need for it. So they have the high power. Okay. They wouldn't need to know the ins and outs of it. They wouldn't need to know the title of every module that I was going to write and how long it was going to run for and who was going to attend. They haven't got that point of interest. What they have got is the power to say yes or no. Okay. Potentially also, say if the HR director would be in this box, my immediate manager then may well still be in this box, but a bit further over. So it might be plotted here, for example, in this matrix. So this is because they're still in high power and high interest, but their probably interest is more than the HR directors, and lower power. So they could influence the HR director. So it might be that I might not get to see the HR director or even the CEO, but my manager could influence them to make that decision because of their interest and their buy-in. Okay. And gradually you might, it's like that good use of influencing. So gradually you'd move over into this part here. So here it would be regular updates and involving the decision making. So it might be fellow peers in my learning development team. So I really want to regularly update them, involved in the decision making, ask their opinion. I might have a focus group to say, right, what would be really interesting for you to have in these modules. I would include the managers of the different departments to say, right, okay, to get their buy-in on the programme, but also their interest on enrolling some of their teams. Okay. So what we're looking at here is the interest is much higher because it's going to impact them. But they also have a relative degree of power as well, because they could say, well, no, I'm not going to release anybody from my department to go on this programme. And that's the importance of actually connecting with the stakeholders, because if I just launch this programme without telling anybody, they would say, well, I don't even know anything about it. So no, I'm not going to engage in this. You haven't actually consulted me. So that communication is really key. And it's not even the communication of sending an email saying, oh, by the way, next week I'm launching a new programme if you want to send some of your people on it. It's actually involving them in the decision making and saying, what needs do you have in your department? What would be really useful in order to train your team on? Okay. And then they can in turn deliver it to their frontline employees and keep them informed. So I could do a big launch program and they may well be really interested, but they would look to their manager to say, are they going to let me go on it? So the manager, my L&D team, the focus group would help me sell this idea to the frontline staff and say, right, great news. We've got a future manager program that if you're interested, speak to your manager and we can get you enrolled. Okay. So we're keeping people informed and they have a really high interest because it affects them. They have no power because if their manager does say, no, you're not going on it, they have to abide by that. They're not going to be involved in the decision making because I've got a focus group for that. So they will be kept informed. Okay. And then the last group here then, the update occasionally. So it's low on power and low on interest. Okay. Who do you think might, I sound a bit like Lloyd Grossman then, who do you think might be in a box like this? Who do you think would be in this one? Who would have low interest and low power if I were to launch such a program? Who do you think it doesn't really affect? I'll give you a clue. If it was, so I'm talking to all the managers of the different departments, it's got to be an employee of this organisation who's been there for over a year, for example. So who wouldn't be really interested in hearing about this new program I'm launching? It could be a new starter, say, who's been there 3 months. They might be interested in it, but they lose interest when they realise they can't apply for it. So it's almost like an FYO. In 9 months' time, you'll be able to apply for this. Or it could be contractors, for example, or temps. If people, it's like an FYI, it's polite to let them know, oh, this is going on. I know it doesn't affect you, but if you hear this big launch of a new program or you're wondering what people are talking about, this is what it is. Okay. What are your thoughts on that? As a model, what are you thinking? Do you think it's something you could use? Sorry, yeah, Ros, new employees, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, you're spot on. Brilliant. Thanks, Ros. It's really useful. I know it takes time, but it gets your brain thinking about how to categorize and think, you know what, I don't need to tell everyone everything. But what's really key is you actually engage the right people at the right time, rather than starting to talk to people on the front line saying, guess what, I'm going to launch this new program. You actually have to get the buy-in of the decision maker first, because they say, you know what, no, we haven't got budget for this, we haven't got time for this. Okay. What do you think the benefit of it is, of having such a model? How do you think such a model would help you and benefit you? Thanks, Carmen. Good model and forces us to think about what many of us are just doing in automatic mode and potentially could miss people. Absolutely, yeah, you're right there, Carmen, because you think you're right, I've got everybody, but what a good list, what I've done is you actually just write down on a piece of paper everybody who it could possibly affect, and then you can plot them. Or it might work the other way. You have that grid, the power and interest model grid, and it forces you to think, well, who has the power? Who can veto this? What's the point of me engaging all these people if I've then got to go back to them and say, oh, I'm really sorry, we can't do it, we haven't got the budget to do it. Absolutely. Ros, it stops wasting time for people you don't need to engage and can take you off track of the main agenda. Absolutely. I might be spending time with the completely wrong people who don't have that decision power. Saves time, Julie. Yep, not engaging everyone all the time. Absolutely. We've only got a certain amount of time, haven't we, and energy. And if we're kind of selling and flogging to people, like flogging a dead horse that we can't, like, yeah, that sounds great, but it's not my decision. It's actually finding out who has that power, who has that interest, okay, of making sure that we spend the right time with the right people. Okay, but it's a good way of sharing best practice, sharing ideas. So by me spending time with, oops, a day saying this way, that way. If I spend time with the people who in this box, they're regularly updated and involved in decision making, by engaging with a focus group, my peers and the managers of each department, I could actually get even more ideas rather than me thinking, I know what needs to go in the programme. A manager who's managing the team may well say to me, actually, no, we need to do something on time management because we need to make sure people are organised, and that might not have even crossed my mind to include that. Actually speaking to a focus group, the people on the front line, this is what I need more help with, and my peers as well. So again, it's communication and it's trust again. Being open and honest, saying, I need your support, I need your help with this. I haven't got all the answers. And then they're really going to support you because you've included them. They're going to have buy-in. Okay. So really use this model to categorise your time, your power and your interest. Okay. So what are your actions now going forward then? How are you going to think differently about stakeholders? How can you use the stakeholder model, the stakeholder theory analysis, to actually change how you currently deal with your stakeholders, do you think? Like we said on chat, it's a good way for you to change, save some time for you, which is really good. And it saves you energy because you're not talking to people you don't need to. How else can it help you? Those who have difficult relationships, do you think this will help you, as in you're getting their buy-in because you're sharing more with them? There's lots of ideas that we will share on with your bonus material as well that we'll send, so you can have some, you can reflect on this as well. Julie, thanks, Tom. Yeah, is it a good idea to plot where all your stakeholders are to form a new style of communication? As in, if you can you speak, Julie, or not, or are you just on chat? Can you come off mute or not? Just to show
Yeah,
it.
I can.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a large volume of stakeholders. We are an umbrella organisation for various BAME charities in Hull. So, you know, we do have a huge volume. So I'm wondering whether it's viable to plot where all our stakeholders are on that grid.
Yeah.
Just to sort of highlight the ones that we do need to be putting more effort in with, communicating with all the time, and then, you know, the ones that maybe, yes, we need to keep in touch with, but not as regularly. And I wonder if that would actually help us. It's all really about time management as well.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, but you're right. It's about spending that right time, the time that you save that you spend with the people who don't have the power and influence. You can then use that time to spend with the people who do. But it is hard. It does take time to do it, but once you've done it, you know, then you might be thinking, oh, I'm spending all this time with this person, and it's actually somebody else who makes all the decisions.
Yeah.
And it's about the value they bring to you and your organisation, and not everyone is going to be treated equally, because and it'll be likewise with us. They will see us as a stakeholder as well. So it's thinking about and it helps with your time management. Right, okay, I literally just need to give information to this person. I don't need to get their viewpoint back. But if it's a two-way conversation, there you're going to be thinking about the methods, what feedback you want. So it is going to take more time. So therefore you are going to rather than it just be keep informed, it will be that two-way of involving the decision making as well. But yeah, thank you for sharing. That's great. Cheers. And Ros, can it help to set the right outcomes for stakeholders to think of prior having to meetings? Yeah, it's a really good tool actually to plan your meeting. Rather than once you're in a meeting thinking, right, are you the decision maker? You can actually, if you can do it beforehand, it's a really good way of planning. And Carmen, the model will help be more mindful and considerate of other people's time too. Yeah, in reverse, I will consider those projects I get sucked into, whether I'm going to be a part of that decision. How interested am I in that particular project? Again, it all helps with time management. Really good idea, yeah, because sometimes I think you get invited to meetings, and I've been in meetings previously years ago when I'm in there thinking, I know I was invited here, but I don't know what impact I'm having on it, because it doesn't really involve me. So yeah, it's a waste of my time, and they're not actually consulting me with anything. So as managers and leaders, maybe it's a way it's something we could potentially delegate to help with somebody else's development. Or is it we could actually go back to that invite and say, thanks ever so much for the invite. Can you just let me know what my involvement would be? And if it is, oh, it's just for information only, let's say that's great. If you could just send me the minutes then, or let me know the outcome of the meeting. Again, you might get an hour back in your diary then. But yeah, I think a lot of the time people don't want to miss people out of meetings. Well, I'll invite them just in case, or I'll CC them and see if they come. But you're right, you can, it's not rude at all. It's absolutely perfectly acceptable time management to go back and say, can I just ask what my involvement would be? Really, really good point. Fantastic. Okay, guys, any other questions about stakeholder communication? Because there's so many things you get involved in. I mean, we do things, communications are massive areas you can imagine, but there's like all the ideas of communication styles as well. Here at 9 Dots, we do something called the DISC model. I don't know if you've heard of that, and it's very similar to kind of Myers-Briggs that you might have heard of. It's about flexing your communication style in order to better connect with somebody. So that might be something that might help as well with your stakeholder manager, that you're thinking, why does this person always need 2 days to think about things? It may well be that they're an introverted reflector thinking about things before they make a decision, whereas you might be an extroverted activist, and you think, I just want to make a decision. Why does it take 2 days for you to make a decision? If we know that about each other, it makes us much more understanding and patient, and that will help your relationship as well. Okay. So what other questions have you got? What other comments about stakeholders? Is there anything else that concerns you or worries you about stakeholder relationships? Or is there any good news stories where you've overcome some challenges in a stakeholder relationship? I'll share my example with you, and it does go back to that the communication styles as well. That I used to think this stakeholder that I worked with was just had no empathy or understanding. It was just very much do this, do that. And again, it was just misunderstanding. I didn't understand their priorities, their pressures. And sometimes it just takes a bit of a chat. I don't know if you've heard of something called perceptual positioning. And it's just an understanding, seeing something from others' point of view. What are their objectives? What are their pressures? Who's pressurizing them? And that may affect their behaviour and their communication with you. So this rapport building of stakeholder relationships is vital. This foundation that you set with them. This is our relation. This is what we talk about. And that it's not just straight into this is what I want. It's how's things, how are you getting on? What are your pressures? What are your concerns? And it's building that relationship. It doesn't come overnight, it does take time. But that investment will pay dividends. Okay. Anybody else want to share anything? No? We've got this bonus resource pack to send you, so you've got lots of information following the session as well. So we've got some blog articles, we've got recommended training programs, we've got links to some books as well, free consultation opportunity, and a recording of this session as well. So we'll send out, we've got a couple of articles, and also there was a podcast that we've done as well, all about stakeholders, so some top tips on there as well for you. So we've got a favour to ask now. Adila's going to launch a poll for you in a moment, and on that poll it's just going to ask you a few quick questions, and we'll also ask you to complete some feedback after the session as well, just so it helps us make sure that we're providing you with the right materials and ideas as well. Okay. So again, just before I launch that poll, just to let you know, sorry Carmen, sometimes it's about being really clear about the benefits, facts and figures, which might not always be available. Absolutely, you're spot on. It's that communication, again, I know I keep going on about communication trust, but if you can be as clear as possible and not assume anything, don't assume that everybody knows the same as you. Okay. So as I said on here, we've got lots of free content. So on the website here, we've got lots of blogs and posts, and we've got the joining the dots as well, which is like loads of ideas, articles to help you. We also offer 95% funded training as well in regards to our apprenticeships. So we go into a lot more detail on what we've talked about today and some of the models that I've mentioned. And also we've got a really good brochure which details all our private training as well. So coming up then on the joining the dots, we've got 10th of Feb is the workplace conflict. And then 24th of Feb is effective one-to-ones and appraisals. Okay, so I'm just going to ask Adila to launch the poll for you. So I really appreciate you doing that for us. Let me just bear with me. If I just pause that a moment. So